Hey everyone, today's deck is sweet as we're only playing creatures with Menace. Our opponents struggle to block and those Haughty Djinn mono blue decks are getting destroyed. They just can't stop the Menace. So I made this deck in anger after getting my big creatures constantly blocked by 1/1s and Haughty Djinns, and it turned out to be pretty nasty to play against. All our creatures have Menace and some have some neat other abilities too. We're pairing them up with Curse of Hospitality, a 3-mana curse which when played against our opponent gives all our creatures attacking them trample, and when we get some damage through we get to play the top card of their library until end of turn. Now we don't care so much about the trample, although it is effective in some situations, but our menacing creatures manage to almost always get damage through. So our creatures are Concealing Curtains, a 1-drop wall that for 3 mana can turn into a 3/4 with Menace, and when it transforms we get to look in our opponent's hand and discard a non-land card. It's a super sweet 1-drop too, as an 0/4 is very hard to deal with early on, and we generally be able to get this card down without it getting countered. Okiba Reckoner Raid, a 1-drop saga that drains our opponents for 1 for 2 turns, and then it turns to a 2/2 with Menace, another card which seems to evade counter spells but manages to get some damage through later on in the game. Night of Dusk Shadow is a 2-drop, 2/2 with Menace that says opponents can't gain life. So this card is pretty good, as for 2 mana we can pump it as well for +1/+1, and we can do that multiple times each turn. I love mana sinks like this as they're really effective early and late game, and the no life gain is incredibly relevant at the moment, especially against mono black decks. Balduvian Atrocity is a 2/3 with Menace that has kicker for a red. When it's cast, and if it was kicked, we get to return a creature with mana value 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield, and it gains haste. Sack it at the end of turn. This is a great value card, as the card we return will always have Menace and will generally get its damage through that turn. Shakedown Heavy is a whopping 6/4 for 3 that allows our opponents to untap it and remove it from combat if they wish, but we do get to draw a card if that happens, so a small little card draw engine here. Professional Facebreaker, a 2/3 warrior with Menace that says whenever 1 or more creatures we control deal damage to our opponents, we get to make a treasure. Another all-star of the deck. Our opponents just can't put down enough creatures quick enough to block our creatures. Our top end creatures are a Junji, the Midnight Sky, 5/5 flying menace dragon that has death triggers. When it dies, either our opponents discard 2 cards and lose 2 life, or we get to put a non-dragon creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield and lose 2 life. Super good card if it lives or if it dies. Finally, Volatile Arsonist, a 5-drop, 4/4 werewolf that when it attacks does 1 damage to target creature, planeswalker and opponent. If it goes to night, it becomes Dire Strain Anarchist, now a 5/5. When it attacks, it does 2 damage to target creatures, opponent and planeswalker. The rest of the deck, 4 Infernal Grasp in case we find ourselves facing multiple creatures, 2 Meathooks as this is the best card to deal with aggro, and we're playing an Ob Nixilis just as a sweet planeswalker in our colours to help drain incrementally and some value in that 3-drop slot. We can also casualty the creature we bring back with our Atrocity before it's sacrificed for some extra value. And we're also trying out 2 copies of Corpse Explosion, a 3-cost sorcery that says exile a creature from our graveyard and deal X damage to each creature and planeswalker, where X is that creature's power. There are other board wipes available, especially in these colours, like the Elder Dragon War or Burn Down the House, but I want to try this one out today as it's relatively cheap. Land-wise, we're playing 24, and I'm not being afraid to use gain lands like Bloodfell Caves. When it enters the battlefield, it does enter tapped, we do gain a life. It's better than losing life through multiple portals though, and we do get to fix our land too. I think this deck is super fun to play with, and our opponents aren't always built to be able to cope with our attacks. It certainly gives them something extra to think about. Anyway, if you want to see more, go and subscribe, sit back and see how we get on with our Menace tribal deck in Standard. Alright, opening hand of game number 1, and we are on the draw. It is a keeper. Turn 1 Bloodfell Caves. Rakdos mana isn't particularly great at the moment. I don't want to take too much damage through 4 Thran portals, so I think we've just got 2 in the deck, but we're playing 4 of these. Obviously they're slightly slow as the mana comes in tapped, but we do gain life, and that's pretty relevant as the game goes on. We get to play our Night of Dusk Shadow here. Opponent with Roaring Earth. I think that gives landfall trigger, +1 counters to creatures when land enters the battlefield. Professional Facebreaker is great, as we don't need to attack with it for its ability to trigger, so we get to play it pre-combat next turn, attack with our knight, and yeah, even if they played a creature, the damage would have gone through from our knight here. So definitely gain a treasure here. Sort of second line of text on this card is we can sacrifice a treasure to exile the top card of a library and play it till end of turn. Not so great in this instance, as we've already played our land, and we don't have anything else. We wouldn't be able to afford anything. Opponent with a creature which has now gone to 6/5, a brawler. Obviously they can't block, so again the menace coming through here, and we gain a treasure. So we can really pile on the pressure here. I guess we could have pumped the knight there, as it has the ability, well, we could do that. But we're in aggro deck, so let's just get rid of their creature, play out our other knight, and get in there. So we did miss a little bit of damage last turn. Second face breaker, that will gain us 2 treasures. And yeah, we're just dominating this game. We're under no real pressure. Yeah, an opponent scoops it up. Dominant display there. Let's get on to the next game on the ladder. All right, game number 2. And yeah, decent draw here. Again, land isn't particularly great. Play out our tap land here. Opponent with Okiba Reckoner Raid. Similar strategy to us. I guess we get to play the Reckoner Raid and a Concealing Curtains this turn. Pretty good turn 2 for us. So we're now pretty reliant on grabbing lands. Meathook for us may be relevant as the game goes on. So a pretty slow start on our end here. 24 lands in our deck. Opponent's Reckoner Raid becomes a Nezumi Road Captain, and there's Liliana. Sure. Goodbye to our curtains. So, oh, okay. So there's a swamp, which is exactly what we needed here, and we do manage to obviously flip our Okiba Reckoner Raid into a 2/2 Menace ourselves. So opponent's probably got a hand packed with pretty decent black cards here. Sheoldred's pretty good. All right, so this is one of those situations where you want to really quickly make sure you set a stop if you've got an Infernal Grasp. As there's been plenty of times, especially if it's played in the second main phase. If no one's got any triggers, it goes straight through to your draw step. But we do manage to kill the Sheoldred before we take 2 damage. So instead of taking 4, we just took 2 there. Now this is a benefit of having Menace creatures. This Road Captain for the opponent would have normally been able to block one of our creatures hitting Liliana here. But it obviously can't, so we managed to destroy Liliana and attack our opponent for 6. They didn't tap down our Shakedown Heavy. Maybe that was a misplay. Maybe they felt that they could block with their 2/2. But anyway, they play the Fell Stinger, exploit, take 2 more damage. Well, this can't block, so okay, no land for us. We do have a great turn here where we get to transform our Concealing Curtains, and it doesn't have Summoning Sickness as it's transformed, so we're going to be able to attack it for a whole bunch. Opponent's hand, I mean, whatever we take is going to be good for us, but they're going to be left with a load of removal in their hand. I like to get rid of Meathook. I feel the card is a little bit overpowered at the moment, especially against us. The life gain they'll get from that will be way too much, I think, for us to come back from. So, Invoke Despair here. Just get rid of our Okiba. Opponent is on 5 life, so there's plenty of ways we can win. Let's see what they do. They didn't do anything. There's nothing they can do against this eye, so they're definitely going to go down to 2 here. The Reckoner Raid will drain them for 2 over the next couple of turns. We do know the opponent has March in their hand, so they're going to gain a bunch of life. But I got a feeling we can do a little smart move here. So the Reckoner Raid is going to drain for 1. Opponent is on 1, so they die next turn in their upkeep. It's pretty obvious what they're about to do. Yep, all their mana into March. But we will kill our own Revealing Eye. Spell gets fizzled. Opponent stays on 1. And yeah, the Reckoner Raid will drain them for 1 in their upkeep. Nice little end to a nice little game against Mono Black. On to the next one. Alright, on the play here. And our hand looks pretty good. Chose to play the untapped Swamp here just to get a creature down. At the moment we can't do anything on turn 2 anyway, so this would be a great turn to play the Caves on turn 2. And yep, Concealing Curtains and get down our tap land here. Pretty decent turn. Opponent, alright, so they're on... Okay, so they've played Island and Consider, so I'm guessing it's one of those Haughty Djinn decks. Being able to resolve these 2 spells has got to put us in a decent position here, as apart from Fading Hope, I'm not sure how they can deal with 2 Menace creatures. They'll need multiple Haughty Djinns, but I wonder if we can get there in time. Okay, so we get to transform our curtains into an eye, and yep, that confirms exactly what we expected. Don't really care about negate. Make disappear is going to be a problem for us, so let's get rid of that. Tap for 3. Clearly a negate will deal with our curse here, and unless they drew a counter spell, they definitely aren't going to be able to counter this heavy. So yeah, this is a pretty dominant display here against this really annoying deck to play against. Opponent with the 4th island, and there's a Haughty Djinn which discounts their spells, so we get to attack for a bunch. Now normally this Haughty Djinn would be blocking, but it can't. So this is like the perfect deck against this deck, it seems. We get to play another Curtains. I mean, if they want to counter this, we can afford it, unless it's a hard counter. Just to make disappear. Yeah, we'll pay for that. So the Haughty Djinn's now a 3/4. Still can't block. 5th land for our opponent. Even a Fading Hope is pretty terrible for them in this instance. Another Haughty Djinn, okay. Alright, so now they can block. We get to transform our eye, look in the opponent's hand. And yeah, they've got all the negates in the world. And I mean, let's see how the opponent gets back from this, and they just scoop it up. Alright, what a victory against a deck which I find really irritating to play against. On to the next one. Mulligan there. I think this hand's okay. Just looking at what to put to the bottom. I'm always nervous about putting land to the bottom of the deck when you are on the mulligan, because the amount of times I struggle to get that 3rd land. But in this instance, our spells are pretty cheap, so... Alright, so we managed to draw a land anyway, so that's pretty cool. Again, we'll lead with a Swamp, get down our Okiba Reckoner Raid, mainly because the opponent's just played an island, and if we're playing against the same deck as we just played against, the 2/2 Menace of this card's going to be fantastic. Opponent's got 2 mana open, so that's make disappear mana. And yeah, they do counter our Knight, which was as expected. One of the things about this deck is you do have to just play your spells. Yes, they may have a plethora of counter magic, but you're not going to win by not doing anything. Opponent with a Delver anyway, so it may not be Haughty Djinn here. We get to play our Curtains, and again, we get to play around Make Disappear here. So let's see what they do. Okay, they let it resolve. It's hard to tell if they had a counter spell or just a draw spell there. Opponent goes to phase out our creature. And they decide to scoop it up. I was just about to kill their Delver in response. Not sure why they necessarily scooped there. In fact, I'm not sure what they did there, but we take those victories and we'll move on to the next one. All right, on the draw. The hand's okay. I do like to have one drops, but if we were to mull, we wouldn't be getting anything much better than this against Selesnya land here for our opponent. Okay, so I'm expecting a bit more interaction with our board here. Hitting our land drops is important, as is getting this Knight of Dust Shadows down. So probably an enchantment deck here. Roadside Reliquary. Okay. Restoration of Iganjo. Okay, so I'm not really sure what we're up against. It's important we just get as much damage through as possible early on. Okay, Plains. So it's definitely not an enchantment deck, I wouldn't say. Otherwise we would have seen some of the Kami or the creature that gets +1 counters for when enchantments enter the battlefield. Generous Visitor. Do get an opportunity here to play our heavy. We could have got through an extra damage by pumping our Knight. Opponent discards a Plains and manages to get it on the battlefield through the Iganjo's ability. So this is a really decent enchantment for ramping. Okay, opponent plays their Iganjo. I wonder if that means they have a second copy in their hand. We'll play our Curtains here, mainly as a sort of duress style card. I guess the opponent could also be holding open a Wandering Emperor. Playing this pre-combat's gonna confirm exactly what's going on. Alright, so opponent has a spell. So I'm guessing they have Wandering Emperor in their hands. So we can definitely look to see. So this is, I think, the benefit and the beauty of this deck is we're not the typical Rakdos deck, so our opponents aren't always built to play against Menace and not being able to block with 1/1 creatures from wedding announcements. Opponent's hand shows it's an Invoke Justice deck. So everything here is... I'd like to discard. We have removal in our hands to deal with the Enduring Angel. Invoke Justice is super annoying, but on the immediate turn, I need to get rid of this Emperor. So opponent gets to untap our Shakedown Heavy if they want. Okay, so they drew a Wandering Emperor after we discarded one. Super annoying. Oh well. Alright, that's a real shame actually, because we kind of lost our benefit of playing the Revealing Eye there. We could have got rid of another spell. And yeah, they would have had 2 Emperors in their hand, but they could only have 1 on the battlefield at any time, so I wouldn't say that was necessarily a misplay. Alright, there's a cool little neat trick of the Knight of Dust Shadow. The opponent didn't gain their life through the Wandering Emperor due to the opponents can't gain life off the Knight of Dust Shadow. Nice little interaction there. Opponent gets to put a counter on their restoration. I feel like this might be a tricky game for us to win from here. The cards in their hand are pretty good, and even if we manage to get a load of damage through, I think they're just gonna, their vigilance and graveyard recursion is going to be pretty effective. So we'll just do what we can. I reckon a raid isn't bad. It could allow us to double spell this turn. We can get 7 damage through as well if we attack with the team and pump our Knight of Dust Shadow twice. But it looks like I went for the Wandering Emperor instead, and sending both at the Wandering Emperor is probably the best idea in case they want to use that Ganjo that's in their hand. Yep. So, Revealing Eye down. Don't need to pump our Knight. Emperor down. So, slowly whittling away their abilities here. Enduring Angel, a card I haven't really come across much. It's going to have to be a threat we deal with a bit later on in the game. Now the question is, do we play this Atrocity or hold open our Infernal Grasp? The Atrocity is good value here. If one of our creatures dies and we get to bring it back later on. So that was my thinking in this instance. Problem with dealing with this Architect of Restoration is another one's coming next turn as well, so seems to be a small bombardment here by our opponent as they invoke Justice. A Titan that they've managed to sneak into their graveyard, so yep. We always seem to have been a little bit behind our opponent's plays here. Luckily we held open our Infernal Grasp. I guess they're going to put their shield on their Titan here, so we'll just destroy that and let them put their shield on one of the other creatures. Meathook's nice, but the board state is not really applicable for that card right now. And our Arsonist isn't going to do too much without the 5th mana. So I think we're pretty much staring down defeat here. Not a lot going on at our end. Not a lot for our that we can do. So we can bring back, we can kick our Atrocity, but it only brings back our Concealing Curtains, and we wouldn't have the mana to transform it immediately. It would get haste, but it can't attack as it's a defender, so I guess the only thing we can do in this instance is just hold open our grasp. Definitely on the defensive here. So it seems that our deck may struggle sort of if we get through to the later game and we haven't managed to get enough damage through. Certainly missing land drops hasn't been great here. Sanctuary Warden comes down and yeah, this is pretty terrible. Opponent attacks for 10. We'll just block the restoration here. Allow us to just kill it quickly. So yeah, I don't really know how we can get out of this, and Okiba Reckoner Raid isn't going to do that. We can block the other restoration, but we're going to be hit from this warden and a couple of citizens. Guess we just play our cards. Meathook for 1, gain a little bit extra life. Just trying to hang in there. And Peacekeeper for our opponent, yeah. We don't win from this situation. We'll move on to the next one and claim defeat. Alright, on to the next game here. On the draw. Opponent with a plains. We get to play our caves. Gain life. So, chose to play the caves then. So in the past I would have played the swamp and the Reckoner Raid, but we do have a turn 2 play. And because of that I'd rather play the... have the option to play the knight here. His opponent plays Intrepid Adversary. So this is a great time to play Knight of Dust Shadow, as the opponent will not be gaining any life from this adversary. And Guardian of Dominaria. Okay. Alright, opponent attacks, so we'll definitely take 3. Whoop whoop. And we can attack past the Guardian here. Play the Thran Portal as it comes out untapped on turn if you only have 3 or less mana. And we get to play our Facebreaker here. And attack with a Knight to gain a treasure. Alright, in this situation, we do have a 1 mana play, so I think it's good that we get down the Reckoner Raid and get some as much pressure as possible. Drain the opponent for 1. These small little draining effects and life gain from the caves, they do build up as the game goes on. Opponent with another adversary. Okay, well, that's fine. We'll take the damage. Missing land drops, I think. Alright, so we really need to try and get as much pressure down as the opponent as possible. They've got a decent sized board, so a 3rd land for our opponent is going to make life pretty hard for us. Yep, just with the aggro deck here, so we're just going to keep jamming a tackle, see what they do. We have follow-up plays, so no problem with that. Benalia will gain indestructible, so we'll try and kill the adversary first. I'm going to lose my creature anyway. And yeah, they don't gain the life from that, and we gain a treasure. So we get to play out our Atrocity here. Okay, so sequence in there, sequence-wise, I guess we could have pumped our Knight for an extra damage to go through, as we got a treasure in the end from our Facebreaker. Opponent with Thalia, it doesn't affect us too much in this game. We're not playing too many instants. Again, they attack for 3. Go for it. No life gain for you. Alright, so this Knight has basically saved us 9 extra damage that we've had to do. They've had an opportunity to kill the Knight, and that maybe they should have done that. I don't know if we could have come back if the opponent was currently on 23 life. So, I mean, they are pretty mana screwed here, so I don't feel too bad though, because we've all been mana screwed in our games. But it is making this game probably a lot easier for us than it needs to be. So we get to play our Facebreaker here. Yeah, just keep attacking. Opponent blocks with a Guardian and Thalia. So either way, I'm losing my creature. The first strike. So we'll get the opponent to... well, the opponent's going to take 4 here. We're getting another treasure. and play our land for the turn. So we could use the Facebreaker here to sack one of our treasures, but Thalia means we wouldn't be able to afford any spells anyway. And my view of playing games like this is be super aggressive. Opponents managed to hang in there pretty well with just 2 mana. Pretty impressed about that. Thalia is a little bit annoying here with its first strike. And after killing our knight, the opponent's going to gain 3 life by attacking with the adversary, so it's definitely a time to block now. So they're up to 11. We probably top deck here our best card in this situation, Volatile Arsonist. 4/4, and it has haste. It manages to do 1 damage to target creature, opponent, and target planeswalker. So we managed to deal with Thalia before it gets a chance to block. Opponent Fateful Absences. Maybe they should have done that before attacks because they lost their Thalia. Alright, more blockers for their opponent. So they must be holding a heap of decent cards in their hand because they still have missed their 3rd land drop. But we've been missing land drops as well throughout our matches. So like I said, it happens to everybody. In fact, we almost could be saying we're drawing too much land in this one. Alright, Curse of Hospitality here against our opponent. And yeah, we're just going to keep attacking. Definitely want to try and kill this Initiate so that it doesn't blow up our curse for any reason. And planes, so maybe shouldn't have played our land that turn, and the opponent finally doesn't get their 3rd land drop and scoops it up. So we take those. A lot of pressure there. Okay, next game on the play. Either one drops pretty good in this situation. We'll go with the Reckoner Raid. The Curtains can be played within the first 2 turns to be able to activate it on turn 3. Opponent with an island. Pretty sure I know what that means. We can definitely play our Knight of Dust Shadow here, as there's no counter spell that can deal with that. And opponent considers, so presumably another Haughty Djinn deck. And yeah, we've done pretty well against these decks today, so we know what to do. So we've already got 2 creatures down that they can't block. This time we're going to pump our Knight. Opponent down to 5. Fading Hope, their only interaction here, so that's the only card we need to really be worrying about. Opponent's presumably holding up a load of counter magic. Kind of okay if they want to counter this. Yep. I guess we could have attacked, pumped our Knight, and then gone to play our Concealing Curtains, or played our Concealing Curtains first, and then we could have paid the 2 mana if they were to counter us, but pretty much everything we do from now going forward is going to get countered, so having a mana sink on the battlefield is so unbelievably important right now. Alright, opponent already down to 6. We get to try and play our curtains. Expecting a mate disappear here. There it is. So this Haughty Djinn deck, I feel like it may have just too many counters, and there needs to be a little bit more interaction on the board. It's fine to counter things, but if you're not playing spells, you're just sitting there doing nothing. And yeah, opponent with a Haughty Djinn that can't block. So they're dead on board because we can pump our knight twice. I can't see that they've allowed this to happen, so I'm definitely presuming there's something in their hand. Just a thirst for discovery there. And yeah, opponent dies. Alright, so we're definitely taking out these Haughty Djinns today. Alright, so that's 7 games done pretty quickly. I actually played a lot more other games sort of before all of this just to practice, and we were kind of sweeping away our opponents. We do lose, I think, to the sort of longer mid-range grindy decks, mainly Orzhov, but against mono black and against the mono blue decks, this was super effective. I'm going to continue playing this in the diamond ranks and seeing how high I can get. I don't really feel that at the moment there's too much I would want to change. Maybe, well, we didn't get to see our corpse explosion go off, but maybe some just sort of single target removal instead, as we are a pretty aggressive deck. But apart from that, you know, I think this deck did pretty well. It's definitely surprised some of our opponents there. Anyway, feel free to subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future, and thanks for watching.